There's a song that I remember from the 70s, 1970s. Jim Croce, I think, was the singer, and in the song it has to do where one person is giving another person a word of advice. And the song goes something like, you don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit in the wind, you don't pull the mask off that old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Slim. Well, I think about the words of advice and wisdom that I've received through the years, and a lot of those I've tried to remember and put into practice. I remember when I'm doing a little carpentry work, I've been told, always measure twice and cut once. When dealing with relationships and communication, I've always heard that it's better to listen twice as much as you speak. And by the way, they say that's why God gave us 2 ears and only one mouth. One that my dad passed on to me, I can remember through the years whenever we would do something and we felt like we didn't have the right equipment, or if we had something a little better, we would say, oh, Dad, if we had this, or Dad, if we had that, Dad, if. And my dad would just look at me and he'd say, well, son, if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his rear end every time that he jumped. Well, I remember those words of advice, and they've helped me through the years. Well, my name is Richard Coleman, and I'm the pastor at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Lexington, South Carolina, and it's great to be able to spend just a few moments with you today. As we've been looking at the life of David, we come to the end of David's life. He is now laying in a bed. He has seen to it that one of his sons, Solomon, has been crowned king. And David calls Solomon to come and spend a few moments with him. And David wants to give him some words of advice. He wants to give him some wisdom. So the first thing that he tells Solomon is, he says, Solomon, one day you're going to end up just as I am. He was telling him that we all have a certain amount of time on this earth. When that time is over, then this body dies. And it doesn't go into great detail with the advice that David gave, but I believe David was trying to tell him, think about the choices that you're going to make. Think about what is really important in life. Oftentimes as I've gotten older, not always when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, when I see an issue or a problem, maybe with a person or a situation, I try to ask myself, this time next week, or this time next month, or even this time next year, is this really going to make a difference? And the answer to that question allows me to make my mind up about how I want to respond to that particular issue. Because I realize that when I come to the end of my days and I look back, I don't want to have so many regrets that I'm just laying there shaking my head. I would like to realize that God had helped me make a lot of right decisions along the way. And I think that's what David was trying to tell Solomon. The next thing that David told Solomon, he said, it's important that you take a stand and be a man. I believe what David was trying to tell him was, there's going to be times when you've got friends that are going to give you bad advice, and you know the right thing to do. There's going to be times when there's pressures by the crowds and the people around you. If it were today, it would be the pressure that the media is putting on us to try to go against things that are biblical and just say, well, anything's going to be okay, and we can go against biblical standards and you'll still make it to heaven. A lot of people are hearing that and falling and succumbing to that pressure today. And David is telling Solomon, take a stand and be a man and do the right thing. And then the third piece of advice that David gave Solomon, his son, He said, you know what God's laws and rules are. And he said, it is important that you follow those and follow the way of God. You know, all those years ago when David gave that advice, they still apply today. And if you've never been given that advice before, I would like to offer those words to you today as a word of encouragement. The Apostle Paul, nearing the end of his life, he wrote some words. He said, I fought a good fight. I have finished the race, and I kept the faith. I can't think of any better way to be able to finish things out than to be able to say that. And you know, it's important for us to realize that in order for us to be able to say, I kept the faith, if we haven't already been working on it, we need to start right now and live for God and be the person that He'd have us to be. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. May you truly walk the walk and talk the talk this week. Thanks for taking the time and viewing today.